Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live presentation titled OPC Archiving. My name is Randy, and I am the presenter today. We're going to talk about the data custody transfer we have between automation and IT, how we capture real-time OPC, DA, and UA data, and how we record long-term historical data. And we will do this on an event-based data capture. Of course, you can do this on time-based or event-based. In this case, we'll do event-based, but I'll show you where you can choose which one you want. And I'll show you how OPC Expert maintains data integrity by preventing data loss using store and forward. At the end, we'll send you an email containing a link to this webinar recording, a link to download OPC Expert, some quick setup videos, as well as an invitation to the next webinar. So you have a better idea of where we're going with this. We have a couple of control systems, as you see over here, and we want to send the data somewhere, so to some destination. This might be SQL or remote SQL server. It might be somewhere in the web like Azure or AWS or something like that, but it's somewhere. So to do that, we put OPC Expert on this computer. We run OPC Expert here, and we're going to be collecting data via OPC. We'll collect the data in a local database. We will do some data analysis in Excel, and we're going to send that data to the destination. We are going to capture OPC data, step number one. Step number two, we will collect the real-time data. We'll put it in a database. Then we'll activate Excel. So we'll run Excel, take a look at some data in there, make sure that we're actually getting data. Then we're going to send the data to the destination. And in this case, our destination is going to be a Microsoft SQL server running on our remote computer. So I will show you that. So what happens when we have a disconnection and a recovery, and how OPC Expert is able to recover from potentially lost data. So this is what we will do. The problem we have at hand, which is the data custody transfer. That's the challenge. So it turns out IT obviously collects data using either files like CSVs, or maybe they'll keep it in XML. Typically, we see a lot of SQL, like Microsoft SQL, MySQL, Postgres, Ingress SQL. It might be Oracle, any kind of SQL database. Maybe you're storing data in the cloud via Amazon AWS or Microsoft Azure or some other platform. You might even go to a NoSQL database like MongoDB, or maybe you're sending it to MQTT or somewhere else. The point is, this is all owned by IT. So somewhere out there, this stuff over here are owned by IT. Automation, on the other hand, typically gets data via OPC. So we're reading data and we're writing data to controllers like PLCs or DCSs. We're sending data to applications like HMIs or historians, or we've got some advanced control applications, whatever there is. But we're reading and we're writing data. We're passing data along using OPC today. And we're using OPC Classic or OPC UA, so OPC with DCOM, OPC DA or OPC UA. We're capturing real-time data, we're reading, we're writing, but all of this is done by automation. So down here, automation, down at the bottom, automation usually does things with OPC, transfers data with OPC. Up here, IT wants to capture this, wants to capture our data and put it in some database. And what we're talking about is, how do we do that data custody transfer? So we use OPC Expert as the middleware in this case. Now, we talked in previous webinars about taking OPC data and sending it to MQTT, or taking OPC data and sending it to Excel, or trending with this, or doing tunneling, or server-to-server communication, OPC bridging. We've seen that before. In this case, we're using OPC Expert to take real-time data, capture it, and put it in permanent storage, long-term storage. So we got to make sure there's no data loss, which I'll talk more about in just a little bit. We want to be able to collect OPC UA and OPC classic data and send to many different destinations. So whatever those destinations happen to be. And ideally, what we want to do is to join IT and automation. And keep in mind, automation is responsible for this over here. IT is responsible for this over here. So once the data goes from automation to IT, you can leave it in the hands of IT and they will do the management for it. That's what they do. So let's go have a look at how this is done. The requirements are we want to reduce the file size. That's a really, really big one. So even a very small plant can generate a huge amount of data. You can send data every minute or every second or every tenth of a second or every millisecond. It could be a huge, huge, huge amount of data. So to reduce the amount of data we're sending, typically what we want to do is make it event-based. In other words, we store the data only when it changes. If it doesn't change, what's the point of storing it over and over and over again? Now, of course, you can make it time-based and store it every second, regardless of change. You could do that. But if you really want to reduce the file size, you make it event-based. And I'll show you where those options are. We also want to be able to handle reconnections. And you might need to reconnect, for example, if there's a software problem, like maybe the OPC server down here at the bottom right crashed. Maybe we lost a network connection. We need to reconnect. Maybe SQL here was taken down for maintenance, totally legitimate. Maybe the computer rebooted for a Windows update. We don't want to lose data. Maybe we lost a network connection for a while. We don't want to lose the data at all. So we have to be able to compensate for all this, store the data, and then forward it along. So we want to prevent data loss and maintain data integrity, as I talked about, store and forward. And of course, there's also redundancy. If you want to add that, OPC Expert already comes with the redundancy modules already inside. When we're talking about Windows, the support in Windows, so I talked a little bit about Excel. So Excel, we've got 32-bit and 64-bit releases. All of that is supported from Excel 2003 all the way to Office 365. So it's all supported. And as far as Windows support, you get Windows XP to Windows 11 if you're using Workstation, or if you're using Windows Server 2003 all the way to Windows 2025. And remember, this is running as, or can run, doesn't have to, but it typically does run as a Windows service, which means it starts up automatically. With Windows, there's no logon required. If there's ever a reboot, restart, somebody kills it, it will automatically restart. Windows takes care of that. OPC Expert will immediately start back up again and continue archiving data. Communication has to be secure. It really, security, I don't think is really optional today. So to do that, there is, of course, protocol security, and that's embedded inside the protocol. So for example, if you're using MQTT, there is MQTT security already in the protocol. If you're using OPC UA, there's OPC UA security already embedded in the protocol. So OPC Expert uses those for sure. It also uses Windows security on top, and also the IT security mechanisms you already have, the firewalls and so on. You can configure OPC Expert for whatever port you want. So OPC Expert just sits on top of your infrastructure. Very specific example, to get data from the OPC server, the OPC Expert can use OPC security, but it can also use Windows security if that's what you want, or both. If you're sending data, for example, to Microsoft SQL, I'm just using Microsoft SQL as an example, you can use SQL security, or again, Windows security to get the data up there with your Windows user accounts, or you can use SQL authentication. Either way is just fine. OPC Expert supports all of that. So I talked about the security. And of course, all the communication is encrypted if that's what you want, or maybe you don't want the communication to be encrypted. It's all up to you. OPC Expert supports both. And as I said, with a firewall, only one port, and you get to actually set that port, which also means OPC Expert comes with embedded tunneling. There's embedded tunneling in there. It's already supported. You can set the ports you want, and I will show you how to choose the ports you're using. So to understand what's happening better, we'll take a look at OPC Expert's architecture. Now, what I'm showing you here is embedded inside, these are modules embedded inside OPC Expert. So everything you see here comes inside OPC Expert. So we start off with an OPC DA client and an OPC UA client, and those are used to ingest, to bring data into OPC Expert's intelligent engine. So the data goes in via OPC DA or UA. Now, because we're talking about Excel, we're going to show the Excel RTD, so the real-time data module, and that's how you get data to Excel very, very efficiently. No more DDE required. But you can also send the data out via OPC DA or UA. And this, by the way, is how OPC Expert has a built-in data converter. You can ingest data with OPC DA and send it out with OPC UA, or receive OPC UA and send OPC DA, or ingest data with OPC UA and send it out with OPC DA. You can also, in this case, it's UA to DA conversion, DA to UA conversion, but it even does DA to DA conversion or UA to UA, and it normalizes your communication. So all of that, as you can see, is built into the architecture. But it goes farther. There's MQTT. I talked about MQTT. So there's an MQTT broker. There's also a publisher and a subscriber. It's a full pub subsystem already embedded inside OPC Expert, as well as the databases. You can send data to Microsoft SQL or all sorts of SQL databases, which I'll show in a little bit, to AWS, to Azure, keep it in XML or CSV. All of that is done. And there is the store and forward capability for all of this. Goes further, you can ingest data with OPC Classic HDA or OPC UAHA, or bring data in from OPC Alarms Events, OPC Classic, or OPC Alarms and Conditions if you're using UA. And you can send information out via REST API, which I will show you in just a little bit. So we can read data via OPC UA, DA, there is REST API, Excel RTD, all these modules are all included in OPC Expert. But in this particular webinar, we're going to talk about these 5 modules here. And we'll talk about DA, ingesting data with UA, sending data out via Excel RTD. There's REST API, as you see over here. And also, you can see with Microsoft SQL, which is what we will show. So let's get into it. We'll do a quick little demo here. And here's what we're going to do. Oh, one more little architecture diagram. So again, we've got the data coming in from OPC servers. We can store the data in XML or CSV, and then send the data out to a whole bunch of different data destinations. There are more coming. This isn't a complete list, but you see quite a few. Now, if the connection over here is ever broken, which it can be because maybe you take these systems down for updates, even if your network is 100%, you might take them down. All data is stored right here locally. So this is local. And when the connection is restored, it just sends all of the data. So technically, OPC Expert doesn't even care. It really doesn't care whether it's connected to these systems or not. It doesn't have to care because it's always storing the data here. And then whenever there's a connection, it takes the data and sends it over. So it's store and forward. And that way you don't lose any data. So let's get into our demo. which is what I promised. So we're taking data from these controllers and we want to send it to some destination. Our destination in this case is going to be a remote Microsoft SQL server. To do that, we'll have OPC Expert right here. We will collect data via OPC DA and UA. We'll take that data and we'll store it in a database locally, and we'll analyze with Excel, and then we'll send that data over to SQL. So 5 steps I'm going to show you here. We'll capture the data using OPC DA and UA, and then we will collect this real-time data. Then I'll show you that the data is available in Excel, and we're going to send that data out to SQL. Once we see this, I will also show you what happens when there's a disconnection and a recovery. So we'll see a disconnection, a recovery, and very important, no data loss. Now, to do this, we have a couple of computers. So here, there's a computer called EdgeStation, and here, there's another computer called SQL DB, SQL database. So SQL is going to run here, and OPC Expert is going to run on this computer. Let's go have a look at this computer at the SQL database just before we begin. So make it a little bit bigger here. So SQL is going to be running on this computer, and we're going to run SQL Server Management Studio, which is how we're going to take a look at data. So I'll just start that. This takes a little bit to just start up. And let's go in here in this computer right over here, which is where OPC Expert is going to be running. So I'll expand that. Here we go. And you'll notice that when you download OPC Expert, all you're getting is one executable. And when you run it, as you see over here, it extracts all the files it needs. As you're seeing, it's extracting all of the files it needs. And you can see in the details here, there is OPC Expert. So it's just one lonely little executable. And it's going to start up. So here it is, starting up. And what you see at the bottom, it's going to start up right away. There it is. There's a little OPC Expert System Tray. So you can see OPC Expert System Tray running. There we go. So OPC Expert started up, and you can see it extracted all the files it needs. We're going to close this. Okay. So first thing we want to do is take a look at our OPC servers. What OPC servers do we have available? And we see that on this computer, we have 4 OPC servers. There's a Kepware DA server, a Modbus DA server, there's the Kepware UA server, and we also see OPC Expert UA server. Let's connect first to OPC Classic. We'll grab some items. So here we're grabbing 15 items. You can see the total update count. Total item count. Here's the update. So it just counts for you. You can see which items updated the most. You can also see, I want to draw your attention to the quality. You can see the quality is all good, and it's 192 in OPC DA. When we go to OPC UA, you will see that this quality that used to be 192 in OPC UA, it's different. Also, you can see the data types, and you can see that we're now collecting the data as fast as every second. So if we go here, I'm going to open up several folders, and I'll subscribe to all of these. So total of 60 items looks like. And we'll go back up to the very top. So here we can see data coming in from OPC DA, and you can see that's the case because the quality is 192, and these are coming from OPC UA, and you can also see that because we've got the quality of 0, which is good. You can also take a look at the the specific server. This is a UA server. This is a DA server. And you can see the item IDs. This is using UA with a namespace, but that's not so important right now. Okay, so we are getting data from both OPC DA and OPC UA. So now let's do this. We'll select all of these items. We will right click and we will archive, create a new archive. And in here, you can see there are many different options and more options are coming, but I'm going to select Microsoft SQL Server. We'll click Next. In here, you can see I'm going to, the computer will be SQL-DB. That's the name of that computer I showed you a little bit earlier. And on port 1433, that's the port that's being used. And you can, of course, change that port. And in this case, I want to use SQL authentication with this username and this password over here. And please use longer passwords. Now, if you want to take a look and change how OPC Expert is archiving data, we can archive only values that change, as I showed you earlier, or archive values regardless of change. So if we choose this option, it will archive values every second. But if we use this option, it will archive only when there's a change. Some other options, but we're just going to use the defaults. Okay, now we're going to test the connection. So here, this test button is very particularly good because you can test right away each step and you can see successfully connected. So I know we're okay. Just before we have a look at this, I want to show you there is the SQL database. You can see SQL-DB. That's the name of this computer. And what I want to show you is SQL has got there is no database here. So as you can see, there's databases and you don't see a database called history. And why history? Because, let's go back here. The database we're going to create is called history. So let's click OK. And now OPC Expert is going to set everything up. So it's actually setting everything up here on its own. There we go. And you can see the real-time update. It's telling you exactly what it's doing. Here we are. We're now connected to the archive started, and you can see this connection is red. It was red, now it's green. So we're now connected to the database. The tags are still, the items are still red because OPC Expert isn't connected. Look, it's connected to some already. Aha. Now it's connected to all of them. And it's actually connecting and getting data from both OPC DA and UA servers. Next, I would like to run this as a service. And just to show you what's going on, I'll make this a little bit smaller. And you can see right now, OPC Expert is archiving, but it's not running as a service. So we're going to go to Tools, Install as a Windows service. So we're going to run this as a Windows service under the local system account and watch what happens in Task Manager. So in Task Manager, there's OPC, the system tray, and there is OPC Expert Archive Server. So the archive server is running as the system account. So you can see it's running as the system account. Give a bit more room. There we go. So it's running as the system account, which means it's a service. And if I go to services, we can see, sure enough, there is OPC Expert Archive Server. No need to wonder what the name of the server is. Everything is pretty simple, labeled nicely. Okay, so the archive server is running as a service. The other thing I want to do is take some data, and really what I'd like to do is trend it, because since we're collecting data, really would be nice to take this data. So let's take one UA item and I will take one DA item. I will right click and trend. Now I could trend in OPC Expert or in a browser. Now what OPC Expert is doing here is creating another service, OPC Expert UA server, and it's already setting up another server, which is the REST API server that I talked about in the beginning when I showed you the architecture. So it's already setting these up. So here we go. It's setting these up, and we're going to be able to see some data coming in right away. So here, and let me just remind you, everything here is a service. So if, for example, if I kill OPC Expert, when I kill OPC Expert, so we can see the services are still running. We're still actually archiving data. And just to prove these are services, and well, you can see that they're running as a system account, but look at this. I can delete the end task, and task, and task, and you can see that they keep coming back because they are services, and that's Windows actually restarting them. So here we can see they are restarting automatically. You notice that the GUI didn't start up because the GUI is not a service, and this is archiving right now, and you can see it's using very, very little CPU. Occasionally you see it jump up a little bit, but it's actually archiving and using very, very little CPU. You can see all of these are almost nothing. Now I'll start the GUI, which is where the processing actually is used. But remember, the GUI isn't necessary to archive. So here we can see the GUI is running, and it will automatically set us up with the archive. It realizes, oh, I'm connected to the archive, and we can see already that the data is being archived. So there we go. So I forgot to show you here. So let's go to, bear with me here. We're going to go, we'll take this guy over here, and I'll take this one down here. So one from a UA server, one from a DA server. We'll trend it, and here comes the trend. And you can see MS Edge Web View. This is actually running inside a browser, and you can see, remember I killed the archive. I killed it here. This over here occurred when we set it up to run as a service, so it had to stop and restart. And you can see the data is coming in. So what we're seeing is data, and we'll take a look at this later on as well. I can take a look here. Let's see where we missed some data. See that? And the X tells us that we missed data, and we can see what we're pointing at with the cursor. So you can see the cursor over here. Down here, you're seeing the values that I'm actually pointing to. So regular trends, you can move them around just like this if you want, so no problem at all. But okay, so here we're seeing, I showed you REST API. And by the way, that's going to be the subject of the next webinar as well. Now let's take a look at Excel. But to show Excel, what I need to do is go to Options, and I need to enable Excel features just like this. So once you check Enable Excel features, then when you run Excel, so you can see Excel is running over here. When we run Excel, we're going to see an option called OPC. So we'll open up. There's OPC. And in here, this came because that option was checked, enable OPC features. When I click on status, shows us right away. Well, takes a little bit to set up. And it's actually connecting to OPC Expert UA server. It's getting data, and it's going to tell us, it's doing a check to tell us the RTD is functioning properly, historical data functioning properly, UDF, and we can see the data updating, so we know data is working fine. And if I go over, I can grab, for example, oh, Let me take some data over here so I can see the real-time data. So if I subscribe to inputs, here we go. So we're getting the data over here, but we can grab this data, put it into SQL, put it into Excel. We can see connecting to OPC server gives us the real-time updates. And sure enough, that is, we are getting data. And you can see everything is nice, drag and drop. And you can figure this out pretty easily with Excel. So we can get data into Excel. We can get real-time data. We can get historical data in Excel. So with all of this, now let's go back and I'll put this up. Let's go back to, so here is OPC expert. We'll go back to the archive. There's the archive. Most important thing here is you see everything is green, meaning it's actually sending data, and you can see the data is changing. What it is exactly is not so important. The fact is we're getting green, a green connection, meaning everything is okay. Let's take a look at the databases, and here we got a refresh. Remember those no history database, but now there it is, history. When we expand it, we can see tables, and there are two important tables here. So one is the items table. This is the table of real-time values. So if you're interested in SQL, there's a table with real-time values. Sometimes people want real-time values in SQL. Sometimes they want historical values, sometimes both. So here you can see the latest value. SQL Server Management Studio doesn't update automatically. So to do that, I have to execute the query again. And you can see, for example, the value here is 90, and now it's 19, and 53, and 95. So you can see this is changing, and these are the latest values. These are the latest values. Let's go take a look at, oh, and remember we had 60 items? Well, 60 rows. So there's 60 rows here, and it tells you the data type and so on. All right, so from here, let's take a look at our historical data. So we'll select the top 1,000 rows, and here is the data. I'm just going to sort it backwards, order by timestamp and descending, so we'll sort it backwards. Now, so this is the latest values. These are the latest values. What you don't see is how many rows we have. And look, we already have almost 40,000 rows, 39,648. When I execute again, 40,028, right? So we're constantly getting new data, 40,300. We're constantly getting new data as we acquire more data. And you can see the data change here. So this is 34,000. We run it again. Now it's 33,000. 21,000, and so on. And you can see the data from all the different items. Remember the qualities. Quality 0 is from OPC UA. Quality 192 comes from OPC DA. So you can very, very clearly see these. The timestamps are coming in. This time is in UTC. And of course, you can use local time as well. Okay, so now we're seeing the values, but you're seeing this for all the items, which is not as easy to see. So OPC Expert, the database also comes with some useful queries. So we'll do this one here. We'll copy it and we'll paste it. And you can go through what this actually is. So we'll go flow. And you can see, there it is. So there's the flow item, and we're just seeing data for the flow item, and we can see the values for it. So you can see every time I update, in fact, there's 21,800, easy number to look for, 21,800. And you can see that now this 21,800 is position 12. If I execute it again, 21,800 is going to be somewhere. Oh, probably past it. There it is, position 18, right? So when I do this again, 21,800, it's going to be somewhere here. There it is. It's in position 29 now. And you can see new values all the time. So we really are getting new data. We really are getting new data. So we're seeing data coming in. One last thing I wanted to show was what happens when we pull the network cable. Because when we do that, so when I'll disconnect, and now I am no longer, you can see the cursor isn't moving anymore. And take a look at OPC Expert, which will tell us, and you can see over here, it still thinks everything is good, which is really not a worry because it's just not able to send data. It waits for a few failures. And you can see the database is red, which means it's got a problem connecting to the database, but it's still acquiring data. It's still storing it locally. It hasn't missed anything. Whoop, I didn't mean to do that one. I meant to do this one over here. So you can see we still have red, and you can see this one is disconnected. As soon as we connect again, so I connected it to the network, you can see we still don't have a connection. Oh, OPC Expert is already okay. And here comes SQL. There it is. And to see the new data, if I execute this again, that was 1837 was the last, and 18 seconds, that was the last time. And we can see all of the data is in here, 37, 38. We can see all the data coming in. We didn't lose anything, even though we lost network connection. OPC Expert showed you it couldn't get data, and now it's getting it again. So we have a full store and forward system embedded right inside here. And of course, you can do your analysis locally, or you can do it in MS SQL, wherever is more convenient for you. So hopefully you understand what we're trying to show here, the 5 tasks. We captured OPC data, we collected the data in real time, we were able to show the data in Excel. We can do both real time and historical data. I even showed you a local trend with REST API. And then we ran SQL Server. We stored the data in there, and I showed you what's going on with the store and forward. Okay, and one more thing I'm going to do here, because when we get back to the questions, I'm going to close OPC Expert so you can see that OPC Expert, the GUI itself isn't running. It's just the services, this one over here, although it's not a service. I'll just stop it just for giggles. So I'll exit this. You can see these other servers are running using effectively no CPU. It's obviously using CPU, but so little, it doesn't even register. We'll come back to this later on when we go back to the informal questions. Okay, so there you have it. Everything is running. We showed all of these tasks. Now, this is, in essence, the end of the formal part here. We're going to just let me say a few more words about the training. These are the people that pay my bills. And then we'll get back to what's happening with the store and forward. So to get automated troubleshooting, you can download OPC Rescue or download OPC Expert. If you download OPC Expert, you'll see exactly what I showed you here. And you can trend, you can bridge, tunnel, archive. All of these modules are all included and more inside OPC Expert. And in this webinar, we talked about trending, archive, and we talked about Excel and OPC UA and OPC classic data acquisition. To get more information, to learn more, you can come to one of our hands-on learning classes, and you can earn your certified OPC professional designation where you attend one of our workshops, you configure OPC, UA, DA, you get 2 computers, you beat them up, you install OPC, UA, and DA, you uninstall, you break things, we break it, you fix it, and so on. It's a really, really interesting class. Now, these are typically remote, which means there is no travel. There is an interactive. The classes are interactive. There's a live instructor. Everything is remote, so you're doing this from your office or from home. These are public classes, so you get to do this with people from other companies, but you can also have your own private training just for your people, and you can check out dates at opcti.com. So one last slide, and then we'll get back to the questions you were asking. So we're going to send you a link to this webinar recording. We will also send you a link from where you can download OPC Expert and a link with examples for Excel and the archive. And if you want to take a look at it right now, there's link, the QR code for it. So you can go here right now and get it as well. You'll get an invitation to the next webinar, which is going to be about OPC to web, where we're going to take OPC data, live OPC data, send it to the web from where you can actually trend it, or you can view it, and you will be able to do this on your phone or on your computer. Pretty interesting, very, very interactive, no programming involved. You get to see this and how it's set up. So it's OPC to web using REST API. Now, if you have any questions, there's our email, phone number, website. So it's all in here. All right, everyone, that's the end of the form part of the presentation. We have a little bit more time to answer your questions. If you have any, go ahead and write them down. But thank you once again for coming to the webinar, and I hope to see you at the next one. Until then, good luck with your projects, everyone.